Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented as always by Full Press Coverage. Check out fullpresscoverage.com for this podcast, other great podcasts, tons of great articles. You can find our podcasts wherever podcasts are found. You can download us right on your phone. Just go to your podcast widget or app and type in the full name of the show, the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. We will be right there. That is as simple as it gets. You can also find us on YouTube, youtube.com/JetStryer. If you're not watching the YouTube already, go and check that out. We have really amazing graphics and awesome movie special features and special effects that everybody loves. I mean, like really expensive Michael Bay level production stuff. I'm talking on the video stuff. So you really don't want to miss out on that, do you, Sap?
No, I don't. I'm not exactly a big Michael Bay fan. He does make big popcorn movies, but, they are fun to watch, but it's kind of like fast food. After you leave the theater, you forget what you just saw.
Sap, I have a question for you as we are starting our show after this very nice spring weekend in Massachusetts. What is it that attracts you to athletes who are the biggest babies in the entire world? Namely Aaron Rodgers and LeBron James, who had quite a bit of complaining to do this weekend.
Yeah, both guys were complaining. I mean, at least LeBron was out front complaining about the play-in tournament. Aaron Rodgers did it through other means. Obviously, we know what you're talking about is Thursday was the NFL draft, and a few hours before the draft, the bombshell story comes from Adam Schefter that Aaron Rodgers wants to be traded by Green Bay, doesn't want to go back there. And then it kind of went through the whole weekend where he wants Brian Gutekunst to be fired. He's the general manager, or he's not coming back.
He wants his head on a pike. He doesn't.
He
just want
does.
him
He
fired.
does. Just
Shot out
get
of a
him
cannon.
out. Well, I know Aaron's a big fan of Game of Thrones, so maybe he's really taking that to the next level. And I don't think the league was very happy about that, because that's one of the biggest events of the season is the NFL draft. And 3 hours before the draft, all anyone could talk about is Aaron Rodgers wants to get traded, and now people are scrambling to see where he might get traded. Is it going to happen before the draft? We know that on Wednesday night, the night before the draft, the San Francisco 49ers were interested. I'm sure teams were scrambling. So, he kind of did throw a wrench into the whole proceedings. The league frowns upon that. I remember in the 2007 World Series, the Red Sox were playing the Colorado Rockies, and Alex Rodriguez signed a huge contract extension with the Yankees. The league was not happy about that. They want the World Series to stand alone. Don't hire managers. Don't do anything. Just, let the World Series be the centerpiece. And I'm sure the NFL wanted Thursday, Friday, and Saturday to be all about the draft, all these, young players coming into the league. And Aaron Rodgers, who is a smart guy and wanted to get this story out, got it out through Adam Schefter. I think the way Aaron Rodgers looked at it is the Packers ruined his draft last year when they moved up and selected Jordan Love at number 26 in the first round. So Aaron Rodgers, who's a petty guy, without question, he's got a little bit of Kevin Durant in him, said, okay, I'll wait. I'll win the MVP. I'll get us to the NFC Championship game. And when it comes to draft night, I'm going to kind of, stomp on your parade or pee in your tent, or whatever way you want to phrase it. So he's very passive aggressive, as is LeBron James. LeBron was a little bit different on Sunday night after yet another frustrating loss. He talked about that, he doesn't feel right. He probably will never be the same again. He's dealing with that ankle injury, and that the play-in tournament is stupid. And whoever came up with the idea should be fired. I don't think he wants to see Adam Silver get fired, because I'm sure the commissioner sign off on that. So, yeah, I do like both of those guys, because what we do, Jet, is we want people who have personalities. We don't want just, cookie cutter type athletes, guys who actually say things and maybe are interesting. And certainly Aaron Rodgers in football and LeBron James in basketball, if anything, they're interesting, right? I mean, they're LeBron's the face of his sport. And Aaron Rodgers, along with Mahomes and Brady, are the three biggest stars in the NFL. And he's different than Mahomes and Brady, because he seems to be irritated at pretty much everything, teammates, coaches, all of that stuff. So, yeah, I do like those guys, because I find them interesting. And you can have some psychoanalysis of them more so than other athletes.
Yeah, you're attracted to big babies, man-childs, as some like to say, guys who like to complain. I mean, come on, LeBron. I'm never going to be the same again. I'm never going to be 100% again. whoever came up with this needs to be fired. Oh my God. Life is so difficult for LeBron James. It's really, really tough, Sap.
Well, I think he's frustrated, though, because they had 71 days between winning the championship and starting this season. And he talked about that if it was his choice, he would prefer they start the season on Martin Luther King Day weekend rather than just before Christmas to give the players a little extra time. The league said, no, we need to start on December 22nd because we need to make money. He also was not in favor of the All-Star game. They had the All-Star game. He went to it and played briefly. And now he's dealing with this injury. Now, you and Skip Bayless think he's milking it. I think it was a serious injury. I don't think that I agree with LeBron that he's never going to be the same player again. He plays as much with his mind as he does with his body. I don't think he's going to forget how to play basketball. So who knows with him? Sometimes what these two athletes have in common, for the most part, I think they think before they speak. There's something else that they're trying to accomplish here. And with LeBron, maybe setting the expectations lower, or he wants sympathy. And then when the playoff starts, he'll be LeBron James, the best player in basketball. So both guys, I think, and I will say this about both players, one of their strengths is how smart they are. That's also one of their weaknesses at times, that they overanalyze on and off the field to their own detriment at times. I think that explains why LeBron has trouble at the free throw line. I think he overanalyzes it rather than just take the shot. And Aaron Rodgers sometimes is more concerned with trying to be the smartest guy in the room or on the field rather than just, moving the chains and winning the football game. I think that those smarts are great and make them all-time greats, but also, weigh on them a little bit.
Where's the column been comparing these two guys, Sap? Why have we not gotten
I'm staying away
Aaron
from
Rodgers, that. LeBron James column. Why? Because you think you'd get too excited, you would never be able to finish the column.
I couldn't finish it. It would be like 2,500 or 3,000 words.
Your magnum opus.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah. And then at some point, people would say, this guy's completely lost his mind. I go on with Ian Glendon on his show every Tuesday, mostly every Tuesday, but sometimes Wednesday or Thursday at around 9:30. So I'm sure when I go on there this week, it's going to be all about Aaron Rodgers, how, he's being a baby and that he wants out. Look, his best chance of winning a Super Bowl is with Green Bay. They've gone to back-to-back NFC Championship games. And I like what they did in the draft. They needed a cornerback. I know everyone wanted them to draft a wide receiver. And I know this is a basketball podcast, but we're kind of tying LeBron and Aaron Rodgers together. And I think that selecting a cornerback in the first round was actually a good move. We all saw the NFC Championship game, right? I mean, Kevin King struggled out there. Tom Brady picked on him. You could make a case that Kevin King was the worst defensive player on the field for either team. So they wanted to upgrade at corner. That will only help Aaron Rodgers. They did pick a wide receiver in the third round, which I think will help him. They also picked a center in the second round because they lost their all-pro center, Corey Linsley, who signed as a free agent with the Chargers. So they've tried to, improve the team. It doesn't always have to be just a weapon for the quarterback. You can improve the quarterback's chances of winning a Super Bowl by improving his defense. I don't think he goes back to Green Bay. I think once June 1 rolls around, they're going to have to move him, and they have to wait till June 1 because of the salary cap ramifications. I expect him to be in Denver, more so than anywhere else. Maybe with the Raiders. Now we're hearing that the Giants are a possibility. The best place for him other than Green Bay would be Cleveland, because they've got a loaded roster and it'd be an upgrade over Baker Mayfield. I don't think that's going to happen. We'll see. It's going to be interesting. He is certainly newsworthy, polarizing, and someone who I think knows exactly what he's doing.
I do find it funny that if he ends up in Denver, that John Elway is incapable of scouting quarterbacks unless they're already, all-time great established quarterbacks. You can't scout them, but boy, he can sign them when they've won an MVP award already.
Well, it's almost like a great director. Well, we're going to cast this movie. Let's try to go with an unknown or someone who maybe is a little bit outside the box. You know what? We can't get it right. Let's go get Meryl Streep. Let's not fool around. Let's go with the greatest actress ever. And if Rodgers plays in Denver, I make the case that 3 of the 5 greatest quarterbacks of the Super Bowl era would have, played in Denver. John Elway, Peyton Manning, and Aaron Rodgers, who I have behind, obviously, Tom Brady at number 1 and Joe Montana at number 2. So, yeah, it's going to be fascinating as we get the NFL feeling a little bit like the NBA, where, one of its best players is, demanding a trade. It's a little different in the NBA. They just go to free agency and sign elsewhere. Although, you can make a case that, Kawhi Leonard, once he went to the Clippers, he wanted to bring Paul George with him. And then through whatever mechanisms possible, that Oklahoma City had to trade Paul George to the Clippers to appease everybody. So
Yeah,
that
except for
doesn't
Oklahoma
happen.
City got a great deal in exchange for Paul George. They got
Yeah.
a future All-Star and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander and a
Yep.
bunch of picks. So, it ended up working out for both teams because, Oklahoma City was sort of directionless with just Paul George. So sometimes it works out that way. Except I want to go back to something you said about LeBron James. In regards to maybe he's trying to set the expectations a little bit low, because I think that's exactly what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
I've maintained all season long, I'm not worried about the Lakers, even if they end up in that play-in thing, which they're obviously in danger of right now. I think that they're going to win the West. I've never really thought otherwise. And I think that LeBron knows that if he can build a narrative into it, that it's some sort of Herculean task to
Mm-hmm.
get out of the West, that just makes him look all the better. He's been
Right.
around the league and been around the media for long enough where he knows how to create and spin his own narrative, and he's done it before. And I think that's exactly what he's doing right now with I'll never be 100%. The play-in tournament is BS, this, that, the other thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's, you nailed it. That's exactly what he's doing, is getting ahead of the narrative right now. Same way that guys do the opposite, the same way that Skip Bayless, like we've talked about, builds up, LeBron's
Mm-hmm.
teammates like Kyrie Irving and gets ahead of the narrative that way. LeBron's doing that with, a couple weeks before the playoffs start, a month before the playoffs start, saying, man, this is not looking good. This is looking like we're going to go down. And then if they are able to get to the NBA Finals, which is what I still expect, people will go, oh, man, how did he do this? So, I think it's a bit of a game from LeBron James right now.
Yeah, absolutely could be. I don't mean to go into the way back machine, but another all-time great, Jim Brown, used to do this on the football field. He'd get tackled, look like he was hurt, get slow getting up, go back to the huddle, and like, oh, Jim Brown, he doesn't look right. He's off. Next time they handed him the ball, 17 yards later, he's trucking people in the secondary. So, athletes, especially at that level, need to get motivated in certain ways. Rather than just show up and do their job, because they're competing at such a high level that, they have to play mind games to trick themselves into certain things. I think LeBron James may be going through this right now because I think he feels a little bit more mortal than normal, because I think this ankle injury was more serious than, say, you and Skip Bayless think it is. And he's 36 now, so you don't recover as quickly. But again, I don't think he's lost that much athleticism. Whatever he's lost in athleticism, he more than makes up with his brain, because I still think he's the smartest player in the league. Certainly, the most experienced among the great players. So, yeah, I think that's something that LeBron James is doing. And Aaron Rodgers always, is facing some sort of catastrophe. He doesn't even speak to his own family. He's
yeah, that's
dated,
strange.
That is strange. He's dated different women and it didn't end well, and now he's engaged. So he's got a little bit of Kevin Durant in him. I've always kind of compared the two, in that they both make everything look effortless on the field, but sometimes they struggle off the field or off the court.
Strangely enough, Sap, LeBron seems like more of a normal human being than Aaron Rodgers, which is saying something.
Yeah, well, I think part of it too, Jet, is that LeBron's married with 3 children, so he's got other things to occupy his time. Whereas Aaron Rodgers has no children. He's never been married. He is now engaged. He does have a lot of interest, but I also get the feeling that Rodgers is a loner.
Yeah, but again, engaged to an actress. LeBron married his high school sweetheart, right?
Right.
So
yeah. No, I think
he does. I'm not saying LeBron does not seem down to earth by any stretch of the imagination.
How could you be?
How could you be?
Yeah, does Tom Brady strike you as being down to earth either?
No,
one does.
No.
None
he's like the least down to earth person on earth.
I mean, Patrick Mahomes feels that way, but that's going to change as he, gets older and more famous and makes more money.
It's weird because LeBron strikes me as probably one of the least down to earth people, because he's been famous since he was 16 years old. Again, I'm not blaming him. That's just what happens.
Yeah.
But Aaron Rodgers makes LeBron James seems like your next door neighbor. That's how kind of off Aaron Rodgers seems to me. And again, we're a basketball show, so we don't have to harp on it. It's just I'm pointing out he's a weird guy. He's a weird guy, Zap.
Oh, I think all these all-time greats are somewhat off. I mean, first of all, to play in the NFL, you have to have a few screws loose, right? Because you're going out there, there's 21 other players on the field, 11 of them are trying to kill you, 10 are trying to protect you. The quarterback has to have a certain makeup, right? I mean, you talk about an alpha, you have to have that in you. And then when you're talking about the best player, I believe, in the history of the NBA, they're going to be wired a little bit differently than other guys. I mean, Kobe and Michael Jordan were certainly wired differently than most. I've always said that I feel there have been 4 athletes in my lifetime who were sociopaths: Tom Brady, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, and to a lesser degree, but I'm going to put him in there, Barry Bonds, who's the greatest baseball player ever. Those guys were just absolute killers. And that's something that's great on the court or on the football field. It may not make you able to adjust away from that.
That's like a one-track
that's something you have to
mind
deal
thing.
with. It is. And that's the same way, Jet, with great CEOs. They're just, if you run for president, I remember in 2007, 2008, when people were saying, Barack Obama's got a massive ego. I go, yeah, he's running for president of the United States. Of course he does.
Yeah, you have to have a massive ego to run for president.
Yeah, I mean, probably the last one we had was probably Jimmy Carter, who didn't have a massive ego, and most people think he was a failed president. So, yeah, I mean, they don't lend themselves to normalcy by doing what they do. It would almost be like a fighter pilot, right? Like, that's not something you or I could do. Hell, I can't even drive a car. But, a fighter pilot is wired differently than the average person. You're in a plane, there's a really good chance that you may get shot down and killed. I mean, just to do that, you have to be a little bit different, a little bit
like an
off from the rest
astronaut
of
or
us.
something like that.
Anybody like that, exactly. I mean, if you're a short order cook or you work in
strapped onto a missile, shot into space.
Yeah, exactly. Dr. Strangelove, that happened, as we all remember.
Sap, so just in talking about LeBron, do you think he actually believes that the play-in tournament is BS, or is it because the Lakers are now in position? Which one is it? Because it can't be both.
No, I think because now they're in position, it doesn't sound as enticing. I mean, who thought the Lakers were going to be right now tied for 5th in the West with Portland and Dallas, 2 teams that, quite frankly, are playing much better than the Lakers as well. I mean, if I was a betting man, I'd say the Lakers are going to probably finish 7th. They've got a difficult schedule coming up. Anthony Davis looks like crap. There's still a lot of rust on him. LeBron is probably going to miss another few games before the end of the season. The Lakers are probably going to be the 7th seed. They'll have
Schroeder's
to play.
in COVID now protocol.
He's in COVID.
So 2 weeks.
Yeah, so there's a good chance the Lakers have to play Memphis in a 1-game play. And if they win that, they're the 7th seed. If they lose, then they play the winner of 9-10 for the 8th seed. So they'd have 2 chances to win 1 game. I think they should be able to handle that. And then they'd be the 7th seed, let's say, and they would play the 2 seed, which would be either Phoenix or Utah, which I think they could beat either team, even though those teams would have home court advantage. They're still the defending champs, and they still have the best player in the sport. But I think that now that they're potentially going to fall into that play-in tournament, is like, what? Like, this makes no sense. I mean, I could be 2 and done, because you can't be 1 and done. You'd have the second opportunity to win a game, because we heard this a couple of weeks ago from the Dallas Mavericks with its owner, Mark Cuban, and its best player, Luka Doncic, say, this is silly. We've got this long season, and then we've got a play-in, because most people expected the Mavericks to be around the 4 or 5 seed. I don't think anybody expected the Mavericks to be on the outside looking in, or even being in a play-in tournament. So, yeah, right. Now they're talking about it. The Celtics are probably, happy if they just make that the way they've, gone up and down this year. And right now they're in the play-in tournament as well. I said a couple of weeks ago, it wouldn't be shocking if the Celtics and the Lakers ended up in the same seed going into the playoffs.
It wouldn't.
Sounds laughable, but they're not that far apart record-wise. As we talk now, Jet, there's only a 2.5 game difference between the Celtics and the Lakers. Now, the Lakers have had their 2 best players miss a ton of games. So it's a different vibe. And you kind of have more confidence in the Lakers that when LeBron comes back, if he's healthy and if AD plays closer to himself, they're still going to be tough to beat. With the Celtics,
they'll still be the favorites. They'll be the betting favorites in the West, the Lakers.
In the West,
I believe they will.
But is that the players, or is it the uniform?
It's the players.
It's the players,
LeBron.
But the uniform.
It's LeBron.
I know, but the uniform still speaks a lot as far as the betting public, right?
Yeah, okay. Well, they're the most popular team, so money goes on the most popular team.
It's like the Yankees could be the second wild card in the American League and somehow be the co-favorites in the American League because they're the goddamn Yankees. Same thing with the Lakers. So I'm not as confident as you are, believe it or not, because this road is going to be tough. 7 seed play-in tournament. Okay, you beat Memphis, then you got to play Phoenix or Utah. You beat them, and then you're on to play the 3 or the 6 seed, which right now could be Denver, which is playing great basketball. Although I get my wish and they avoid the Clippers for as long as possible, because I still think that's their toughest matchup.
Sap, they'll beat Memphis in that 1-game play-in by 45 points. And then they'll play, if they play Phoenix in the first round, they'll win that series in 5 or 6 games, or Utah 5 or 6 games. The only team that I think actually presents a challenge to them are the Clippers. I could see the Clippers winning. I would bet on the Lakers, but I could see the Clippers winning. I don't think any team presents a serious challenge to them in the West other than the Clippers. I really don't. Maybe I'll be proven wrong, but I mean, I've watched a lot of basketball this season. I've watched a lot of basketball in my life. I've watched a lot of teams think that they stack up well against LeBron James, and for him to just pick them apart in the playoffs. I don't think that highly of Utah or Phoenix. I like the stories for both of those teams this year, and I think that they're a really good regular season teams. Just the same way that a couple years ago, Sep, I didn't think that highly of that Atlanta team that won 60-plus games. I didn't think that they were conference. The Lakers, when healthy, have two of the, in my mind, top 5 players in basketball. You could maybe stretch it out and say Anthony Davis is like top 8, but when he's playing at his A game, he's a top 5 level player. LeBron, yes, I still believe is the best player in basketball.
Yeah, because that's hard for me to
say.
But you're someone who, but you would sound idiotic to not believe that, because he has more ways to beat you. Is he going to score like Durant? No. Is he going to rebound like Embiid? No. But the total package is there: offense, the defensive end, the leadership, the smarts, the experience. So
the experience, too, Seth, like you said. I mean, there's something to having been there time and time again. I mean, that really, really makes a difference.
Yeah, he's not going to be frightened by the stage. I mean, that did happen in 2011 against Dallas. For some reason, he just, locked up, or you want to use the term choked. I don't like using that, but if it applies to 2011, the finals, that was his one finals where he did not play well. The rest of them he's played well in.
Right, that was a decade ago now. So
that was a decade ago, and he's won 4 championships since. I don't think any of that's going to come into play 10 years later. So yeah, I mean, I still think that they got to get him healthy. They got to get AD healthy. Now we got to see what happens with Schroeder, and now you've got Kyle Kuzma speaking out after the game saying that Marc Gasol should be playing more minutes. And so that's like a slight at Andre Drummond. So I don't know what's going on in that locker room.
Trade Kyle Kuzma. Really,
well, it's kind of late right now, but he's another guy who, for what he brings you, is too much of a headache.
Exactly.
I mean, a 12-point per game scorer who's not really a great defensive player, who's wildly up and down. I mean, he
likes LA too much.
He does. He likes the blonde hair, the girls. God bless him. He's a good-looking dude, and I'm sure he's doing quite well with the ladies in Southern California. But all of a sudden he's become the spokesman of the Los Angeles Lakers, and saying that Marc Gasol should be playing more minutes than Andre Drummond. And the Drummond, LeBron, and AD haven't played together much, and that's going to be tough to adjust to. Because with LeBron, it is tough to adjust at times because he's the guy who runs everything, and now it falls on the shooters. We see Kevin Durant, miss 3 weeks, come back and score 36 because he just fits in so easily because he's a catch and shoot scorer if he needs to be. He just gets his own. You don't really have to really adapt much to Kevin Durant. He is what he is. With LeBron, it's a little bit more difficult for all those pieces to fit. So it's going to be interesting final 2 weeks to see where they end up seated, because actually Portland's playing good basketball. Dallas, is playing well. The Lakers started out 21-6, Jet. At that point, we were on saying that, no one's beating them in the West. No one's going to beat them in the finals. Since then, they're 15-22. Now, I know most of those games were without AD or LeBron or both. So, that will explain quite a bit. Maybe they've actually done a decent job staying afloat. I know some people thought they were going to fall out of the playoffs completely, which I could never see happening because they had built up enough of a lead in the Western Conference that they'd really have to go off the rails to not qualify for at least the play-in tournament. But it's going to be interesting. But I think LeBron, again, is playing head games, setting the sights very low so that when he goes out and wins the play-in tournament game, knocks out Phoenix, like you said, in 5 or 6 games, knocks out Denver and then the Clippers, and he's in the finals, they'll say, what a Herculean effort by LeBron, which I do believe if he wins a title this year and it ends with him beating Brooklyn in the finals, that may be his greatest accomplishment. Although it's tough to top beating a 73-9 team in 2016 in Golden State when the Cavs were down 3-1.
Yeah. We talked about this. The road would be tougher. Not that I think that the road is all it's cracked up to be in the West, but it's certainly better than the competition he faced in the Eastern Conference playoffs when he got to that and ended up winning the title, coming back from 3-1. One last thing I want to touch on with LeBron, Sap, before we move on to the Celtics, unfortunately. So There's rivalry I'm starting to sense between LeBron and Daryl Morey, because Daryl Morey, after LeBron James tweeted out, or not tweeted out, said in his press conference, whoever came up with that play-in tournament needs to be fired. Daryl Morey tweeted out this little subtle jab. I can't believe the NBA hastily implemented a change that makes games more interesting and meaningful. And
Yeah,
this
it does
is,
sound like
remember,
they do have a rivalry. Yeah.
criticized Morey for his tweet about
Yeah.
China over a year ago now, and said actually pushed Adam Silver to suspend Daryl Morey, which Adam Silver wisely said, "No, I'm not going to do that, because then it would set a terrible precedent, and I'd have to do that for all you players who like to speak out."
Right.
I don't think they like each other,
Nope.
Morey and LeBron, and I do think that this adds like another interesting, fun thing to a rivalry between a player and an executive, which you don't really see very often.
That's pretty cool, actually, when you think about it, that a player has a rivalry with an executive and a respected executive. But I think what happens, Jet, is maybe I'm going too far down this rabbit hole.
I'm sure you are, but go ahead.
Daryl Morey is really the father of analytics in basketball. I mean, obviously he worked for Danny Ainge, but he's a MIT guy, brilliant guy. It's all about analytics. You can make a case that Steph Curry is the most impactful player of the last however many years, because he's changed the game. Girls are playing more. Anybody thinks they can be Steph Curry, which is kind of laughable because you can't, but at least he gives hope to, the common man, a smaller guy.
Sure.
You can also make a case that Daryl Morey's had a huge effect on the game, right? Because it was he in Houston that really pushed, okay, a three is better than a two, and a corner three is better than any other three. And look, Houston got to a couple of Western Conference Finals. If Chris Paul doesn't hurt his hamstring in 2018, I think Houston wins that series. They're up 3-2 when he got hurt towards the end of Game 5. I think Houston was better than Golden State, perhaps that year. But Daryl Morey, built something really good in Houston. They just couldn't break through. It almost feels like Moneyball in baseball, like the Oakland A's and the Tampa Bay Rays. They really live by Moneyball. It gets you to a certain point. But you know what? When you get to the conference finals or the league championship series, it just doesn't break through. You still need the players. I just wonder if a lot of black superstars who see that a lot of black executives and coaches have been shunned by analytics, because the analytics is perpetrated by white executives and white coaches. I just wonder if black athletes are saying they're infringing on our game. Like they're taking the flow and the beauty of the game away from us and turning it into a spreadsheet. And that's what Daryl Morey does. Whereas, look, LeBron's very analytical, very smart player, but I don't know if he's necessarily into analytics. Just a wild theory. I've heard it before. Chris Broussard talked about it, that some of the black players in the league resent analytics because it's all about, the MIT executive, coach, etc. Maybe that's a theory behind it too.
I could buy it until you said Chris Broussard, because Chris Broussard never knows what the fuck he's talking about. And, typically I don't like to drop a hard F on the podcast, but
you have a budding rivalry with him. That's the thing.
He is the least informed, plugged in NBA insider. He is as much of an NBA insider as my wife is an NBA insider. Well, he does not know what he's talking about. He has no sources. He is a dummy. Chris Broussard, he really is. So, Sap, if that's your theory, that's great, and I can buy into it. If Chris Broussard endorses it, it immediately throws it out the window for me.
He doesn't endorse my theory on LeBron, but he's mentioned this in the past, that, some of the black players look at someone like Daryl Morey. He never played. It's a computer printout now. It's not real basketball. And then there is some criticism that from fans who say, do we need to see teams just hoisting up threes endlessly? I know some older fans are like, the game's turned into a 3-point shooting contest, which it hasn't. There's still other parts of the game that are beautiful to watch. But that could be at the heart of that rivalry. But you know what? Maybe LeBron, very late in his career, because he wasn't always this way, he's starting to seek out enemies. Now maybe it's the commissioner with this play-in tournament, or getting back too soon from last season, or having an all-star game. And now Daryl Morey, and he had some sort of issue a year ago over China, and now Daryl Morey's tweaking him because LeBron isn't a fan of the play-in tournament. Maybe this is his way of motivating himself. He's been in the league 18 years. Sometimes you need that little extra motivation to keep going. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, listen, the China thing with LeBron was next to the decision, the worst, probably the lowest moment of his career in terms of, optics, how people perceive him to being.
Well,
It just was it was a bad
especially
look.
ultra conservatives. They were like, well, you speak out about everything. Why don't you speak out about China? Look, I wish he did speak out against China. He makes a lot of money there. I understand. And one way you could put it is China's not our country. That it's the duty of high profile athletes or celebrities to speak out about the wrongs in this country, not necessarily other countries. I disagree with that because I think China is the one of the most grotesque countries on planet Earth when it comes to human rights. And I give Daryl Morey credit for speaking up a year ago.
I look at it more, Sap, is
on
that I don't care so much that if LeBron does or doesn't want to talk about it, that's his prerogative, but that he criticized somebody else for talking about it. I
Right.
think that's where it annoyed me. So if LeBron doesn't want to say anything about China, that's fine. Maybe he doesn't know enough. Maybe he doesn't care. Maybe he's protecting his financial interests. Whatever the reason is, he's every right in the world to not talk about it. But Daryl Morey has just the same amount of rights to talk about it if he wanted to. And LeBron basically told him to shut up and dribble.
Yep, I agree.
Not that those exact words, but the same stuff that LeBron hates to hear from Laura Ingraham is more or less what he said to Daryl Morey. And so I think it was bad optics. And with the decision, a lot of those bad optics were made because of, LeBron was getting advice from his buddies or himself. So he's not going to really lash out at his friends or himself about it. And Daryl Morey presents an actual specific enemy that made LeBron, frankly, look bad. I think he doesn't like him.
Yeah, I supported Morey in this a year ago because I think that when I look at, everyone, I don't want to get political, but everybody looks at the Soviet Union as an enemy. I look at China as an enemy, Saudi Arabia. And, anytime that you just prop up those countries that China can do no wrong because we have so many business dealings with them, it's just not right. So no, I was in Daryl Morey's corner for that. And I remember when that happened, they're like, oh, we may have to suspend him or fine him or he's going to be out in Houston. I go, for what? For just voicing his opinion? No, I was with Morey on that. And I thought it was a bad look for LeBron. I'll admit when LeBron does something wrong. Heck, 2 weeks ago, we did a podcast on what happened, a half hour after the verdict in Minneapolis,
right,
when the young black woman was shot by the white police officer and LeBron, was, tweeting out, you're next. When I think that was wrong because you have to get the facts before you put out a tweet like that when you have 50 million followers. This isn't me or you putting something out. This is the most famous athlete in the world. And I think he was wrong in doing that because he jumped the gun. He should have just kind of held back and waited till you get some of the information. Now, that's not the way it works on Twitter. We get that. Twitter is sudden. It's raw. That's the good part of it. And that's also the bad part of it.
Yeah, I think that LeBron looks at it and said, Daryl Morey, you put me in a bad position. You made me look bad. And Daryl Morey goes, this guy didn't have my back. I've had the players' backs in the league, and he made me basically a pariah for the league's ownership because they lost a lot of money because of it. And LeBron certainly didn't help things. So I think that they probably closely watch what each other say and like to rankle each other if they can. So LeBron complained about the play-in tournament. Daryl Morey responded with a tweet endorsing the play-in tournament. It's just something to keep an eye on, especially if somehow the Sixers and the Lakers play in the finals. That would be really fun.
It is a possibility. I mean, there is a chance that is your final matchup.
But Sap, unfortunately, let's get into the Celtics. We like to check in on the Lakers and the Celtics because they're our two favorite teams, and they're also, some of the more compelling teams in the NBA. Celtics, after we last spoke, Sap, had one of the greatest comebacks in NBA history, coming back from a 32-point deficit against the San Antonio Spurs to win the game in overtime. Jayson Tatum tied a Celtics franchise record with Larry Bird for a scoring in a single game, a 60-point outburst. Also, I'd like to point out no turnovers in that game, too, for Jayson Tatum, so just an incredible performance. I said this on my my post-game show. One of the all-time greatest performances in Celtics franchise history, which is, that means a lot. And I really felt that from Jayson Tatum as an individual. It was one of the all-time greatest performances in Celtics history. It just, the fact that it happened to coincide with a 32-point comeback was really cool. And then you say to yourself, hey, this could be an inflection point here. Celtics really showed some grit and balls, as Kevin Garnett likes to say, and maybe they found their heart. And then they lost the next game to Portland, and somehow at the end of the game, Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum managed to injure each other. And I tweeted this out, for a team that has a leprechaun as its mascot. It seems kind of ironic at this point because this team, especially this season, has had no luck. And that was just encapsulated last night as they lost to Portland. And in the closing 40 seconds of the game, Brown and Tatum ran into each other and both had to go to the locker room.
Yeah, and I think they're going to be fine. I know Tatum spoke after the game. Jaylen Brown didn't speak after the game, so it leads you to believe that Tatum's going to be fine. Brown's been dealing with ankle issues for, the second half of the season, so we have to keep an eye on that. Luckily, the Celtics don't play till Wednesday, right. So they have a couple of days leading up to that next game, which is so rare in the NBA right now. Normally, you're just playing every other day. So maybe it gives Jaylen Brown, Jayson Tatum a little chance to try to get healthy. They're so young and in such good shape. They can recover more quickly than, say, a player in his mid-30s. This kind of sums up the season. You have that incredible high of Friday night. And I'll go along with you because Jayson Tatum putting 60 on the board when, his team needed every one of those points to beat San Antonio in overtime. No turnovers. He carried the team. In the second half, he was spectacular. And, I said it, I believe, a couple of weeks ago, he will set the record for most points in a single game by a Celtic. He just tied Larry Bird. I'm convinced he's going to drop a 65 or a 70 at some point. I can't go much higher than that. I mean, Kobe had 81. Devin Booker had 73. Jayson Tatum's quite as capable as Devin Booker, putting 73 on the board. Now, when Devin Booker did that, Phoenix was getting blown up by the Celtics, so it became kind of almost like a joke. Whereas, Jayson Tatum's the quarterback who threw for 500 yards when his team was down. And, oh, by the way, they came back and won the game. So, no, it was a great, great performance. He has this type of ability. And I think you also see his passing has improved. He's a natural passer. And because he's such a great scorer, there's going to be opportunities for him to set up his teammates because when he drives to the basket, you're going to see a double team. If he can spot the open man and the Celtics can start hitting those jump shots, their offense will click that much better. But, nice win against San Antonio, and then Portland comes in. And what was a really good game for about 44 minutes, the last 4 minutes, Jet, took like an hour. It felt like a colonoscopy combined with a root canal. Oh, horrible. My God. Horrible. What was that all about? It was insane. Missed goaltending calls. I mean, they
two missed goaltending calls.
Right.
Offensive. Thompson. You wipe away 4 points from the Celtics. Then, for Portland, a pretty blatant blocking foul on Peyton Pritchard that they called a charge on Damian Lillard. That was, when you saw it, his Peyton Pritchard's whole foot was in the restricted area. They missed that. Then there was a flagrant foul that was on a moving screen by Nurkic that they, for some reason, decided to eject Marcus Smart for because he hit Nurkic in the balls. But it looked like he hit Nurkic in the balls because Nurkic moved him with the screen. Otherwise, his hand wouldn't have been in that position. And I've never seen somebody get ejected for a flagrant one before. It was all. And also, that replay took 6 minutes of real time, Sap.
6 minutes, yeah. No, from the 4 minute point on, it had to be well over a half hour. I was like starting to fall asleep because then Portland had back-to-back timeouts and then the Celtics called a timeout and then Brown and Tatum got hurt. So we had to wait for them to get off the court and hobble into the locker room. I mean, the last 4 minutes was excruciating. That's an issue with the NBA, especially with the replay system that you have. It's like you need 6 minutes to figure this out. Like, if you can't get it figured out in 30 seconds, move on.
Yeah, they have. We've talked about this before on the podcast. I think that you need to have a very, very strict time limit that call on the floor stands. If you can't figure it out, you got 45 seconds, maybe a minute to figure it out. If you can't, call on the floor stands, period. You also need an independent group reviewing it. It can't be the officials. They don't want to overturn their own calls, especially with the challenges too. The challenges are dumb, but if they're keeping them, then it can't be the officials looking at their own play. You have to have somebody independent looking at it. They're not going to overturn it. So that's a waste of time. And also, when you talk about 6 minutes of real time to figure out what the hell you're going to do and then manage to get the call seemingly wrong, the NBA has an officiating problem. It has for a while, but I think they need to invest more. And another problem I want to talk about with the officials real quick, Sap, and this doesn't have anything to do with the Celtics, but it has to do with a star player in the league, is Luka Doncic has won tech away from a automatic 1-game suspension. The NBA officials are teeing guys up way too much for nothing, for nothing. I mean, Luka said, and he complains a lot, as a lot of players in the NBA do. Frankly, they all complain a lot.
They all complain.
But I think Luka said to the ref, "What the hell?" and he teed him up. I mean, that's nothing. Come on, unless the player is out of line and like really, I'm talking out of line, like showing the ref up, swearing at him, getting in his face. Just let them vent and tell them shut up and move on. No one wants to see guys tossed. Certainly no one wants to see Luka Doncic suspended for a freaking game down the stretch here because the referees decide to give him a technical for saying what the hell. I mean, it's ridiculous. They're very sensitive, the NBA officials.
I remember I was at a Celtics game in the 80s and Bird got ejected, I believe, late in the first quarter, early second quarter. And like people worked their asses off to buy 4 tickets to come to this game. And back then, and even now, but back then it was impossible to get tickets to a Celtics game. And Larry Bird was gone. And people were like, I laid out a lot of money, went out to dinner before the game. My kid wanted to see Larry Bird. It's his favorite player. And he gets tossed. I mean, like you said, Jet, it's got to be something extreme. If now they're threatening the official, or if they throw a ball at them or anything like that, absolutely, you can't have that. That's chaos. That's anarchy. But we're there to watch the players, not the officials, and that's an issue in the NBA. I also wonder, with minimal fans in the stands, does everybody have rabbit ears at this point? You can hear everything.
Maybe
you can hear everything. I mean,
maybe.
How many times do we hear Marcus Smart screaming on the court? A lot. I mean, he's either making a porno film or a horror film. I mean, every time he goes to the basket, it's and I'm like, did Marcus Smart get shot or something?
I'll say that
what's going on?
It's a good thing for the league that this limited fan attendance didn't happen during Kevin Garnett's career, because they wouldn't be able to run the games.
No,
because you hear him. But as far as the officials go, Sap, if you want to tee a guy up, then they should switch the rule to you can't automatic suspension or no ejection for teeing up. Just up the fine. Then up the fine. The players will pay the fines. And
they
shouldn't be getting tossed. They should be getting tossed for flagrant fouls if they're excessive and dangerous. Okay, you want to toss a guy for that. But if he's I've seen guys Sap this season just wave at the ref like this, and get teed up. Come on. I mean, listen, they need to talk to the officials and say, guys, listen, we know these guys are a pain in the ass. They complain a lot, but no one is here to see you ref the game. If you're upset with how a player is acting to you, take it up to the league office. We'll fine them. We'll fine them. Take the money out of their pocketbook. But we're not tossing guys from games for showing up the referees. No fan wants to see that. It's ridiculous.
They've all turned into Cowboy Joe West in Major League Baseball, who thinks it's about him. No, we go to watch in the arena or on TV to see the players play. That's the attraction. And I wonder now, those technicals, they carry over into the postseason?
Yeah.
Does it make sense if Dallas is, this is a stupid question. One more technical, he gets a 1-game suspension. Does it go back to 0, or does he keep getting suspended? Okay, I was going to say, because if that's the case, and I sound like an idiot asking this, and I know you're the best person to ask because you know every minutia about the NBA, but I would just get it out of the way. Okay, F you, throw me out. Now I'm back to 0, but no, it carries over. We see Draymond Green's dealt with this in the postseason. So, yeah, I mean, could you picture Dallas in a play-in game and he's suspended? Does that make any sense?
No,
Mark Cuban, who's had problems with the officials since the moment he bought the Dallas Mavericks, is going to go nuts, and I don't blame him.
The idea was put into place because of one player, Rasheed Wallace, because it got out of control. I think he picked up 42 in a year, which is every other game.
That's amazing.
No one will ever touch that. Now it's 16 in years suspended for games. So they put it in because it was out of control with Rasheed Wallace, but they should get rid of it. It's silly to have it, because by the time you accumulate 16 techs, conceivably the season should be almost over like it is now, or it'd be in the playoffs. So you're talking about suspending guys for the biggest games of the year.
For the biggest games, yeah.
It makes no sense.
No, or ended in the regular season. Carry it over to next year. So, okay, you've hit the limit. So the next season, you get suspended for a game. And you can't be suspending guys in the postseason. We know what happened with Phoenix back in 2005 when a few players left the bench. They got suspended, and that may have cost them a championship. I don't think they would have beat San Antonio anyway, but that didn't help it was Amari Stoudemire and a few other top-notch players suspended for Game 5 in that series. So
right. So Sep, it's 16, and then you're suspended, and then every 2 after that you're suspended a subsequent game. So you have I guess a little leeway, 1 technical foul worth of leeway. But yeah, so Doncic could conceivably miss multiple playoff games if it's ridiculous. They should really look at it. I mean, Luka also talked to him. Maybe you shouldn't be picking up 16 technical fouls in a season.
No.
But I've seen him play, and he complains a lot, but I have a hard time believing he's saying anything that's that bad to the referee.
Maybe he's swearing in his native tongue and they don't know what it is. Maybe he's complimenting them in his native tongue and they tee him up at some point. But yeah, I mean, the one guy who you never really see complain to the officials is Kawhi Leonard, but that's because he's a cyborg.
Right.
I don't even know if he has any technicals, if he's ever had technicals.
Just very, very few. Like
very
Tim Duncan was the same way, and Joey Crawford had a bug off his ass about him, and he tossed him when he was on the bench one game.
Yeah, that was the weirdest thing. You talk about a rivalry. I mean, we're talking about LeBron and Daryl Morey.
That made no sense
because Tim Duncan was like the perfect superstar. I mean, he complimented teammates, officials, opponents.
He was on the bench, Sap. He
was on the bench, probably half asleep. I mean, he oftentimes played like he was half asleep. He was so damn good. But yeah, Joey Crawford again, because they're getting a little bit of celebrity. So they've now got a brand, right? Not as much now as before. I remember growing up, like Earl Strom was this outlandish official. He was great because he would oftentimes be the perfect road official. Like he would give big calls to the road teams, which you never saw in the NBA. He was very flamboyant, but I think at some point they knew when to rein it in and let the players decide the game, not the officials.
Yeah, I just think overall the NBA needs to invest more time into their officials. Maybe, like have an off-season program of just getting random people to come in and yell at them just to condition them to the NBA season. Just it's out of control with the text. I can live with the fact that basketball is a hard game to officiate and they're going to screw up calls. I can't live with the fact that they're going to toss players from games, especially really good players from games. No. So, that's a thought on that, Sap. And so we're going to wrap it up here. We are, as always, the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. And you can find us. We'll tweet out the links to the show on YouTube and on wherever podcasts are found. Follow Sap on Twitter at JohnSap25. Follow me on Twitter at JetStrier, JetStriar. And we'll be back tomorrow with a fresh edition of the podcast, looking forward to the NBA playoffs and an interesting list of NBA players from Forbes magazine, of all places. We'll check that out. So make sure you download the podcast or tune in, and we'll talk to you then. See you, everybody.